Neil, here's the disclosure package I told you about. There's the TDS, the SPQ, and this new Fire Hardening and Defensible Space form, the FHDS. Take your time, answer every question, and get it back to me as soon as possible. If you have any questions, just text me and we'll figure it out.
Will do, Realtor Jana. I keep great records, and I'm a lawyer. I'm sure I will have no trouble at all. You've got to be kidding me. Ah! Hi, Realtor Jana. I think I need a little help with this fire form.
No problem, Neil. How far did you get?
Section 1.
Okay, let me send you a link to Zip Community and we'll go over this together. This first section just lets you know if you have to fill out the rest of the form. You are selling your home and you are not exempt from making other disclosures, which is why I sent you the TDS and the SPQ. The public records show that your home was built in 1950. If your home was built on or after January 1st, 2010, then Section 2 would not apply to you. So the only thing left is to figure out if your property is in a high or very high fire hazard severity zone.
Well, that's where I got stuck.
Okay, let's look at the NHD report I sent you. Page 1 of the report identifies 2 types of fire zones. The first is called the very high fire hazard severity zone. If that box is checked yes, then you have to fill out the rest of this form. Even if that box is checked no, you may still have to fill out the form. Let's look at the other section called State Responsibility Area or Wildland Fire Area.
Oh, I got it. So if that box is checked yes, then I have to fill out the rest of the form.
Not exactly. If this zone is checked no, and the first zone was also checked no, then you do not need to fill out the form. But if this box is checked yes, then you might have to fill out the form, but maybe not. The form only applies if you are in a high or very high fire zone. But the problem with this section is that a yes answer could mean you are in a high or very high fire zone, but it also might mean you're in a moderate fire zone. To find out which, your report should refer you to another page. That page might tell you if AB 38 applies, or it might tell you whether this fire zone is moderate, high, or very high. If it says AB 38 applies, or it says you're in a high or very high zone, then the rest of the form does need to be filled out.
Okay, so let me look at that report you sent me. I don't think this is so bad. I see right here, my report says that AB 38 applies. So now I need to fill out the rest of the form, right?
Yeah, let me stay on the line and I'll help you with the rest.
Section 2B1 is asking if the size of the vent openings are greater than 1/8 of an inch. Do I need to climb onto my roof with a ruler and measure that? And how would I know if the roof is flame resistant? And I just bought the house a few years ago. How would I know if the wood shingles are treated? Treated for what? And what are bird stoppings anyway? I think I'm losing what little hair I have left. Jana, help.
Sure, so don't worry about that. Section 2B is asking if you are aware of any of those things. So if you don't know, then you are not aware, and you can honestly check the no box for that question. You do not have to climb a ladder or get up onto your roof to find out. If you know the answer to those questions is yes, check yes. And if you don't know, then you say no.
You know what, Jana? Section 3 confused me too. Can you help me here?
Sure. So Section 3A asks if your property is in a local vegetation management or defensible space area. It may sound confusing, but that's simply a requirement that you keep brush and trees away from your home and that vegetation is trimmed and your lawn is mowed, things like that. The purpose is to minimize the risk of your home catching fire, even if the surrounding area burns.
I got it. If I know, I check yes. And if I don't know, I check no, just like in Section 2.
Unfortunately, Neil, that's not how this section works. You need to actually find out the answer to this question.
How do I do that?
Okay, well, you can start by looking at your own records. Did you get a notice from your city or county telling you to trim the trees or remove your brush or anything like that?
I don't know. I throw out everything I get from the government, unless it's a bill, and then I burn those.
Okay, then, good to know. So there's other ways to find out. There is a state website at fire.ca.gov/dspace that might let you know. You can look up your property by address, but not every local law is referenced there. If that does not let you know, then there are a couple of other ways you can find out. The company that prepared that form we looked at a little while ago that talked about the high or very high fire zones, they have maybe mapped the local requirements, but again, not always. You can give them a call and find out. Lastly, you can go ahead and call your local fire marshal, or since it's the 2020s, you could do an online search.
Can't I just call up my old neighbors? They sold their home last year and asked them what box they checked.
Sorry again, Neil, but believe it or not, it's possible for one property to be covered and the other not, even if they're next door to each other, especially in rural areas. So it all depends on where exactly the lines are drawn.
All right, Realtor Jenna, I will find out. Once I do, am I almost done?
Okay, so you're getting close. We move on to section 3B. Section 3B asks if your property is in compliance with either the state or local law. Compliance means not just that your property was inspected, but that it passed the inspection. Someone, either you or the buyer, will have to agree to bring the property into compliance, but we'll deal with that in section 3C. That comes next. This section 3B, this is the easy part. If you don't know one way or the other if your property is currently in compliance, then 3B1 applies and you'll move on to section 3C. If you have a report showing that you are in compliance with local law, and if that applies, or state law, if there is no local law, then 3B2 would be checked, and you will also check 3C5, then you'll sign the form, then you're done. If third option, you have a report that shows you're not in compliance, then you check 3B3, and then we'll go on to the next section from there.
So I happened to find a report from 3 years ago showing my property is in compliance, or at least it was then. Is that good enough?
I'm sorry again, Neil, but I'm afraid not. State law would require a compliance statement that was issued within the last 6 months, and most local laws require at least yearly compliance.
All right, Jenna, let's move on to section 3C. Seems a little complicated to me. Who designed this form anyway? I'd like to tell them a thing or two.
That's not important. You're almost done now, so let's stay focused. The law requires different answers depending on whether or not there's a local law addressing vegetation management. Remember, section 3A asked you about this? So when section 3C is completed and signed by you and the buyer, it becomes a part of the contract. It's really important to get this right. 3 of the options in this section put the burden of compliance on the buyer. 3 of the options put the burden on compliance on you, the seller. It's less work and less expense for you if one of those first 3 options applies. If there is no local law and you have not already brought your property into compliance with state defensible space requirements, then this section applies. And the buyer will have to bring the property into compliance within 1 year after the sale, and there is nothing left to do in section 3. Some local laws are triggered by the sale of the property to provide a grace period after the sale to bring the property into compliance. If that is the case, then you may just want to let the buyer bring the property into compliance after escrow, so you'll check this box. Most local laws do not have this kind of link between the sale and compliance, but you'll need to check to make sure. If a local law is in place, but compliance is not linked to the sale of the property, then the yearly compliance date is established by the local fire marshal or may even be set by statute. Most local laws work this way. In this case, you may just want to let the buyer bring the property into compliance themselves after closing escrow. Now, there are a few local jurisdictions in California that require proof of compliance upon close of escrow. If that is the case for your property, you will check this box and you will need to get an inspection during escrow and complete any necessary steps to bring your property into compliance so that you can get a report showing you're in compliance or have passed. For example, you'll probably have to cut down that tree limb that's hanging over your chimney. This paragraph applies if you've already complied with the defensible space or vegetation management requirements. If you checked 3B2 above, then you'll also check this box. Congratulations, you're in compliance, and that should make any buyer very happy. Paragraph 3C6 recognizes that it may be easier to sell your house if you obtain a report showing the property is in compliance with applicable state or local law. A buyer may not want to take on the burden of getting an inspection and paying to bring the property into compliance, and they could insist that you bear the burden even if you're not legally required to do so. So let's talk about whether you want to agree to this up front.
You know, I know the market is slowed down in my area. I want to do everything I can to make my property attractive to buyers. How do I get an inspection so I can learn what it will take to bring my property into compliance?
So CAL FIRE, the state fire agency, has inspectors that will go to most properties. You can go to that CAL FIRE website and find out if they are conducting inspections in your area. If not, then you'll contact your local fire marshal.
Thanks, Realtor Jana. You are the best. Are we done yet?
Just one more really easy section to go. This paragraph is so easy. If you have a report, you provide it to the buyer. If you've got a report, but you don't have it anymore, then write down where the buyer can get a copy themselves. And if you don't have a report, there's nothing to do. That just leaves a signature.
I think I could figure out that signature portion on my own. After all, I am a lawyer. You know what, Jana, this wasn't so bad after all. I still don't like the form, and I bet I could do better if I drafted it myself, but at least I can understand it now. I can even feel my hair coming back. Thank you, Realtor Jana. I'm so glad I hired a realtor to help me sell my house. You are worth every penny.
You know, realtors are not just real estate licensees. Realtors subscribe to a code of ethics. I am glad I can help you figure out the fire hardening and defensible space disclosure and addendum.